So today's episode of Let's Talk Estate Planning, we're talking about the phase of estate planning that takes place between the day I sign my documents and the day I die. That is those documents that enable my helpers to make sure that things get carried out the way I want them to. And we're going to talk about how to extend your independence and extend your functional range by having a hybrid plan. Thanks for joining me, Jim Miskell, for Let's Talk Estate Planning. So glad you could join us. Remember, everything we talk about on Let's Talk Estate Planning is not legal advice. To get legal advice about your particular situation, you need to go see an attorney, where that attorney, she can ask you the questions that become necessary to make sure that whatever advice she gives you is the right advice for your family. So that's it. That's my disclaimer. I got this friend, Jill. Jill's mom lives in the house that she and Jill's dad have lived in for 50 years, and he's been gone for about a decade. And she's really not able to keep up with the things that you need to be able to do to stay in the house. Her driving's not good. She has trouble making sure the bills get paid, and just a little bit confused about what's going on. Doesn't want to hear it from Jill, though, when she says, "Mom, we need to get some things in order. Let's go look at some places. You don't have to move near me, but there's a couple places in town where some of your friends are, some nice communities, retirement communities where they've got more help. And you could be in there." And we're not talking about help that smothers you so you don't have anything to do, any independence. But Jill's mom doesn't want to hear any of that. And of course, this has been going on for a couple of years. I talk about it like it's present tense. What has happened now is that Jill's mom couldn't stay in the house. It wasn't safe. She had some situations where Jill's brothers had to run in and save her last minute, and ended up in the hospital, and from rehab straight to a community, an assisted living place, which is one of the ones she could have gone to visit but refused to. And now she's over there, and she has some panic from time to time. She makes the phone call. "What am I doing here? I'm not sure why I'm here." So today we're going to talk about the reasons, the tendency of folks to put that off, to put off the idea of planning. Because as we age, decisions get made. They can be yours or somebody else's. I prefer for them to be mine. And that's a big part of what estate planning is. So today's episode of Let's Talk Estate Planning, we're talking about the phase of estate planning that takes place between the day I sign my documents and the day I die. That is those documents that enable my helpers to make sure that things get carried out the way I want them to. And we're going to talk about how to extend your independence and extend your functional range by having a hybrid plan. The first part of the plan, you're in charge, and you remain in charge as long as you can. In fact, you remain in charge even in the second part of the plan if you don't know what's going on, because you've left instructions for your loved ones. So that's what we're going to talk about today, is how not to end up like Jill's mom in a situation where she feels like she was put somewhere rather than she chose to go somewhere. You could join us. Remember, everything we talk about on Let's Talk Estate Planning is not legal. My mom and dad actually had the idea to move. My dad did. My dad had a cancer diagnosis that was in remission and then came back kind of with a vengeance. And he had sort of been putting off the move, looking at places, because it was becoming pretty apparent that they weren't going to be able to stay there if he got a lot sicker. And my mom had macular degeneration. Her eyesight was not good and only getting worse, so she wasn't going to be able to stay long-term where they were. As it turned out, my dad's disease progressed faster than he expected it to. And rather than going to look for places for them to move together, he passed away in the house they lived in, they'd been living in. As a result, my mom stayed there to grieve, and in some sense was kind of stuck in that house. She had a lot of support from me and my siblings. We went to see her a lot, but nobody lived closer than about 75 miles. And it was very difficult to broach the subject and to get her to be proactive about making a move. We finally convinced her that she'd have better access to social activities. She'd have better access to the medical attention that she needed if she moved over closer to my brother, about 5 minutes from where my brother and sister-in-law lived. And she did that. She finally made that move. But it was really almost with her back to the wall, with a gun to her head. And although she never questioned the move the way Jill's mom has, where she felt like somebody made the decision for her, so she came out with a better result than Jill's mom did, she still only got to enjoy relative independence in the new community for a few months before her other health issues meant that she needed a lot more attention and assistance and finally nursing care. So she really didn't get to enjoy those last, I'd say, about 8 years of her life because she was going to make a stand in that house without my dad. And really was not something that I could convince her otherwise. Neither could my brother or my sister. Suffice to say that I understand when clients come in and they talk about not wanting to give up independence. And I see estate planning really as a way, rather than giving up independence, to extend that independence. I can't tell you how many folks I've talked to who say, I'm not going to do a power of attorney because I'm not ready to stop paying my own bills. I know what I'm doing. I don't need that assistance. I'm not ready to go to the nursing home yet. And when folks say, I don't want to do a power of attorney because I'm not ready to give up my independence, that's great for me because I say, great, that's not how they work. Powers of attorney actually extend your power to somebody else, I tell them, without having to give up any yourself. So you're there continuing on as you can, but you've picked somebody and given them the authority to act if you're not able to. And a lot of times that makes a big difference because, again, as we age, decisions get made. They can be yours or somebody else's, and they can also be the somebody else you pick, or it can be what I often call your quickest family member. If this ends up in court, if I lose my ability to handle my own financial affairs and I haven't appointed somebody, my family can go to court for relief because the courthouse is there for all of us. If we don't have matters handled ourselves, every state has a statutory code and judges who are ready to fix those problems. The problem is it's not going to be necessarily who you would have picked to manage your finances and make decisions for you. It would be somebody who's most eager to do it. And very often they're not the best folks to do that. And that's why estate planning is so important in extending independence. So you can divide estate planning into two kind of divisions. And one is estate planning that's about money and maximizing money and making sure that assets are distributed the way they need to. And the second is to make sure that decisions during my lifetime, during your lifetime, are yours, are mine, and not somebody else's. So that's what we're talking about today, that idea of extending the range of independence by allowing for a hybrid plan. And so that hybrid plan means that I make the decisions as long as I'm able to. And the hybrid part of it is I selected somebody and hopefully somebody and some backups and given them the authority to do what I would do if I become unable to do it. So let me give you another example of planning that maybe didn't go so well. A young lady named Susan called my office and said that I'm mom's only child, and she put me on the bank account so that I could pay for her care. She's in assisted living. In fact, she's gone from assisted living to memory care and really doesn't know which way is up anymore. She really can't manage anything anymore or make much sense to anybody. She has told me for years that I have her power of attorney, and she told me where to find it. I've been on the bank accounts for a couple of years so that I could pay her costs. I'm getting ready to pay next month's memory care. I've got about 3 weeks to get that payment done. We don't have enough money in the bank accounts anymore. I realized we've run short. So I need to tap her other assets. There's retirement accounts, 401k, IRA, that kind of thing. I took the power of attorney where she told me I could find it, and I took it to the custodians of the funds, and they looked at it and said, this is not an active power of attorney. This is a springing power of attorney. You need certificates from 2 doctors before you're able to access mom's money, before we are able as the custodians to allow you to manage and also withdraw funds from the accounts. Susan went on to say that she had then taken that power of attorney and gone to mom's doctors, 2 or 3 of them, and showed it to them and said, hey, can you sign this certificate? And that they were not very excited about doing that at all. In fact, they told her, hey, Jim Miskell here. Sorry to interrupt the episode. Hope you're enjoying today's content. A lot of times when folks are thinking about this kind of thing, questions spring to mind. If you have questions, we like to do some question and answer episodes. So you can go to our website, letstalkestateplanning.com, and shoot us a message and say, hey, on the podcast, I'd like Jim to cover this on the next question and answer session. Or if it's hitting closer home, especially if you're a Georgia resident, of course, we can't give legal advice on the podcast because it's not specific for your situation. But if you got a situation that you need to handle, it's important to get that done. So let's talk estateplanning.com is how to contact the office. I'd love to talk with you about the specifics of your situation and make sure your estate plan is everything that your family should have it be. In the meantime, we're going to go back to the episode. Thanks for tuning in, and I hope to talk to you soon. In fact, they told her, no, that's not really what we do. She was a little confused here, and she was kind of mad at the 401k custodian or the retirement fund custodian. But look, the retirement funds custodian promised her mom they weren't going to give her money to the wrong person or the wrong people. So they were just holding up their end of the bargain here. As far as the doctors do diagnosis and prognosis. Incapacity, which is really what's going on with this power of attorney that Susan's mom did, it said you need 2 certificates saying I'm no longer capable. That incapacity is a legal determination. It is not a diagnosis or prognosis. And doctors are really reticent to go out on a limb on that. And this is akin to a situation a lot of folks I've talked to have known or had somebody in their family, it could be their mom or their dad, who shouldn't be driving anymore. And you go to the doctor and you say, Doc, take their license, right? You're going to pull their license. And the doctors sort of blow them off and won't do it. Well, this is why. That's because this isn't what doctors do. Doctors do diagnosis and prognosis. They care for people. They don't make legal determinations. The way we handled this with Susan was that we formulated a couple different versions of those certificates of incapacity so that Susan could see which would be palatable to mom's doctors. And she found 2 doctors that were able to say, well, I'm willing to sign this. And so we did that. And she then took the power of attorney now and the 2 certificates to the custodians of the money, and they said, great. And you were probably expecting me to say, and release the money. No, they said, great, and said, we got to send it to our legal department. The good news is that they eventually thought that those certificates were okay, and they were willing to release the funds. The bad news is that Susan contacted our office in September, first or second week in September, to pay October's bill. The certificates, along with the power of attorney, were not approved by the legal department of the custodian of the funds until like Thanksgiving week. So Susan came out of pocket for 2 months. Thankfully, she was able to do it, but not all kids can. And this is also not what mom had in mind when she executed the power of attorney. So this is a springing power of attorney that makes people feel really warm and fuzzy when they sign it. I don't want anybody to have authority. I'm not giving up my independence until I am disabled, but they're really problematic in the way they work. So that brings me to, that's another sort of misfire, but brings me around to, what should you do? Well, you should come up with a plan, pick people that you trust, people who are responsible and have the bandwidth and capabilities to, in this case, Susan's case, manage money, which she did, and make sure that they're going to have that authority when they need it, not when some other people say it's okay. That's the problem with relying on the statutory solutions where you've got to get in line at the courthouse before the family gets permission to go ahead and do what needs to be done. That's the problem that Susan ran into with having to negotiate with the folks who were the custodians of the money. They were just holding up their end of the bargain with Susan's mom, where they said, we're not going to give your money to the wrong person, but it made it hard on Susan. So that's what's required as you think about this first phase of estate planning. What happens to you between today and the day you die? Making sure that you first have chosen the correct people, that they've got the willingness and the capability to do it, and that they've got the authority when they're going to need it, not when somebody else decides they can get around to decide it's okay to let your helpers do what you've asked them to do. So that's really the importance. We've talked a little bit about powers of attorney. If you want to know a lot about powers of attorney, there's a separate episode all about powers of attorney, springing powers of attorney, and how broad-ranging powers of attorney should be. So estate planning, just to bring it full circle, deals not only with who gets your stuff when you die, but it's also who's going to help you remain independent. You're not giving up authority by doing planning. You're actually extending your authority. Jill's mom felt like the rug was pulled out from under her. My mom did not, but she waited too long to make the move. She was confident that she had made the decision, somebody else didn't, but she waited too long. She didn't make a decision that was good timing. And then finally, Susan's mom really hedged her bet with that springing power of attorney. Thought she was doing the right thing, but as it turns out, it really would have been nice if before Susan's mom went to memory care, we'd gotten a chance to review her planning with her to see whether or not it was going to do what she needed it to do, because I guarantee you that's not what she expected. She thought that Susan would have the authority to act when she needed to. So extending your range of independence depends upon you selecting the people you want to act on your behalf and making sure they've got the authority to act when they need it. At the Estate Planning Law Group of Georgia, that's what I do all the time, is I talk to folks in the state of Georgia about making sure that they've got plans in place that will work when their family needs them to work. And the family needs them to work not just after they die and who gets the stuff and how it gets divided up, but also should incapacity strike, how's that going to work? And are the decisions going to be made in accordance with what my clients want, or is it going to be a family who's set to doing the best they can and just improvising to make sure that mom and dad are safe, but maybe not cared for the way that they would have chosen? So in this episode, we've talked about that first phase of estate planning. The second phase is who gets your stuff when you die. The first phase is making sure that you've got the right people in place with the right authority to act on your behalf when you need them to. Not while you're still independent, but when you need them to, they're going to be able to step in because you've given them the authority and the instructions to act on your behalf, and the decisions that get made as you age are your decisions and not somebody else's. If you'd like to know more about estate planning, that second phase, who gets your stuff when you die, what options are available there, the other techniques and tools that we can use planning this first phase, a great resource is my website, letstalkestateplanning.com. It's the very same name as the podcast, letstalkestateplanning.com, and there's a lot of good information there and more than a decade worth of blog postings on various topics in estate planning. Additionally, I do live in-person workshops about twice a month. I'm in the Atlanta area. Would love to have you stop by for a workshop if you get a chance. All you have to do is contact the office. We'll make you a reservation. They're free to attend, and it's great information. It'll give you some ideas about common issues and options in estate planning and really give you a head start on your planning or looking at the planning you've got in place to make sure that it still does what you need it to do. Folks walk out of the workshops just so well equipped to go ahead and do what needs to be done to get it in place. And one of the things I really talk about in the workshop is moving from information gathering to getting this done. Because information gathering is great and it's important. It makes you an educated consumer, but it doesn't do you any good to gather a bunch of information and not get it done. And if you become disabled or die in the meantime, it's not going to be much comfort to your family that you gathered the information but didn't actually act on it. So would love to see you at a workshop. Additionally, look for more episodes of Let's Talk Estate Planning. I've really enjoyed talking today about the idea of extending the range of your independence with a hybrid plan. First, you're in the driver's seat. Second, selecting some drivers to take over when you can who already know your roadmap. I'm Jim Miskell, and I look forward to talking to you soon.